background was studying architecture, never practiced. And then in late 94, started a small food manufacturing business. It was meant to be a 3-month sort of project, turned out to be 17 years and 400 staff and 19 properties and a big, heavy,
yeah, that's what it looks
difficult business. Somebody's got their microphone. Hi, can you mute your phone, please, or your screen? I appreciate it. So, and then during the course of the last few years, what happened was that I saw something that I'd never seen before, which was a lot of businesses outsourcing the skills they require in their business to independents. And in my big, heavy food manufacturing business, this was something that amazingly sort of intrigued me. So I went down this rabbit hole of writing a book. I wrote the wrong book. I always joke about the fact that I wrote the wrong book because it was a book that was going to help freelancers to become better freelancers. And what has actually happened is that the majority of the income that I've managed to get off the back of the book has actually been corporates asking me how to use freelancers more effectively. This book was then turned into a 12-week, 36-hour course that was lectured for a year and a bit out of Vega. It was then condensed into a 1-day course. And there's been iterations of this, of the information on this book in different sort of workbooks, worksheets and different workshops and formats. A lot of what I'm going to be sharing today is coming out of this book and the research that was done in producing this book. As I said to you before, at the beginning of this, please take some notes and you can shout anytime you want. Some of the stuff I may refer to are some worksheets. At the end of this, if you want some of those worksheets or templates, I'm happy to share them. I speak quickly, so keep up and ask me questions. So I think that just in terms of where we are today, we're currently facing a large-scale population behavioral change. This is the COVID situation, okay? We're burnt out and we're being challenged in the way in which we work. And in the last couple of weeks, in particular, what has happened is that the entire landscape has sometimes become obsolete in a lot of circumstances, and a huge requirement for change in the way we look at employment. So the rules of employment and communication have been changed, and a lot of businesses are looking for a more decentralized model of using external freelancers or independent professionals to deliver the work in a more prolific way, and a much quicker way, and sometimes a way cheaper way of doing it. So some of these lessons are the things that I've obviously experienced through my own work experience with a lot of businesses that outsource a lot to freelancers, and the research, as I said earlier, where I've interviewed hundreds of freelancers and quite a lot of businesses in terms of what they like and don't like using the gig economy. So the current state is as follows, is that in the last couple of years, since 2004, in the EU alone, and I'll tell you why we only have a lot of EU and American stats, is that the average growth year on year for the number of people in the EU joining the freelance market has been 45% year on year compounded growth. At the end of last year, there were 11 million registered freelancers in the EU. Now, again, the reason I'm having EU and American stats, in this country, there's very little classification of the freelance space. It's predominantly, you're either a PTY or you're a sole prop or you're unemployed. The big driver was the 2008 crisis in Europe, where 1 in 7 qualified people lost their jobs and obviously needed to find income and join the freelance space. Now, if we're looking at the current circumstance with the 2020 and COVID-19, I think that we're going to see another massive spike because of all these retrenchments that are happening and people looking for alternatives, and the existential crisis people are having around, am I happy in work? You know, they've got time to think now. I think we're going to see another massive spike globally in the freelance space. Some people out of choice, and I think a lot of people out of necessity. If we look at the service-based in EU, these are the freelance numbers that are qualified. You can see that at the end of last year, there were 11 million. And again, based on the 2020 circumstance, I think that number is going to spike dramatically. I think that graph's going to go up at a hell of an angle. The UK freelance space in 2016, the contribution to the GDP from the freelance space was 109 billion pounds. And to give you some sort of context, that was bigger than the entire UK motor industry. In the UK, they have something called a PSC, which is a public service company, which is a kind of entity like we have a PTY, but you can only be a single person. You can't have any employees. So they've categorized and taxed differently the freelance space. As of last year, there were almost 2 million PSCs registered in the UK, and an additional 250,000 PSCs registered are people that are currently full-time employed and doing the side hustle, right? The side gig, making extra cash on the side. Some of the things which are becoming more transparent is that a couple of years ago, the New York City Council put in some laws to protect freelancers, where if a freelancer was doing work for anyone else more than $800, that the city council would actually support you in a legal battle if you weren't being paid. Because obviously in the past, small guys supplying big corporates can't actually afford to fight them legally. So now the government's stepping in to go, how do we help? End of last year, something very similar happened in California. It's called the AB5. It's around the classification of what is freelancer versus what is an employee. The guys like Uber, we've all seen the fact that there's a lot of controversy around Uber drivers not really being freelance people, but they're actually employees and not being paid well enough. So they've now got a three-pronged approach to classify freelancers versus employment to protect freelancers and employers. One of the big trends is that mothers aren't going back to work after having babies. So 1 in 7 in the UK of freelancers are mothers that are not returning to work. And I think that in certain of the Nordic countries, the paternity thing is very similar. So there's a lot of fathers not going back to work. One of the misconceptions is that the freelance economy is made up of young 21, 22-year-old kids. And the actual fact is globally and in this country particularly, the vast majority of freelancers are between the ages of 40 and 45. And I see that everywhere. And I think that one of the reasons is that by the time you've hit 40, you probably had 20 years work experience if you're lucky, and you probably realize that you don't want to work for another boss. And life is getting shorter, and you realize the fragility of time. And you probably now want to go out there and actually take a chance on your own. You've got the skills, you've got the network, possibly a bit of saving, and your risk profiles probably changed slightly because now you probably had kids in the last couple of years, and now you're at a point where you can go out and do the work on your own. Another misconception is that all freelancers are strictly, cool hipster creative kids. That's also not true. A lot of them are, but anyone that sells knowledge or information or can sell their time is classified as an independent professional, an R-Pro. When I interviewed a lot of the guys during the research, this stat came out of Time a couple of years ago, but my findings were very similar. So why do people join the gig economy? The main reason is obviously they're looking for money. Like people are looking for income and they can't find jobs. But a lot of people are just looking for the flexibility, the independence, and to own their own schedule, own their own time. When we look at locally, the single biggest stat that came out that was impressive for me is that the vast majority of people made the leap because they wanted to and not because they were forced to. Now, I think in the current circumstances with all the retrenchments that are going to happen and all are happening at the moment, I think those numbers are going to sway in the other direction. People are going to be forced into finding work and selling their skills. But in the past, a lot of guys have joined because they wanted to, not because they were forced to. I don't know how many of you have been exposed to the Big Macs Global Index. It's an index that I always talk about to freelancers and something they should follow. What it does is it tracks the average price of a Big Mac per country in dollars. And then based on that, you can see where the expensive Big Macs are in the world. And the reason that's important is that those places are very expensive, which means that here in South Africa, especially now with the Rand dollar exchange, means we're really cheap. So wherever the burgers are expensive is the countries where you should be selling your skills from remotely. And now more than ever, the remote sales is actually fairly easy. So watching this index gives an indication of which countries will give you the best return per hour sold. People that have put the word freelance in their bio on LinkedIn, you can see that the majority is still arts and design, media and comms, but business consulting, engineering, education, IT, and all the ones below are growing year on year. If you look at the stat year on year, the arts and design at one point was about 60%, it's now less than half. So a lot of other industries are moving into the freelance space because they can see the viability of earning an income that way. A big thought shift is moving away from I have a job to I have clients that I work for, and I'm not unemployed, but I'm actually self-employed. When we look at the models of businesses in the sectors that I play, traditionally the old model had 85% core permanent team with peripheral suppliers of freelancers when required, when capacity was under pressure, or we needed certain skills that we don't need all the time, and we weren't getting employed because it didn't make sense. The new models of a lot of these businesses is a 15% core. That's made up of sales, account management, finance, sometimes marketing, always project management. And often some of these businesses are selling services that they don't actually employ. So the actual work being done is always outsourced to somebody else. And those businesses are the businesses that are currently surviving the impact of COVID. They don't have massive retrenchments. They don't have massive offices. They're lean and agile, the terminology people talk about, and they're able to adapt quite quickly because they got variable overheads. So these guys can quickly cut back because they don't have 85% staff. And in service-based incomes, staff and rent are the two biggest expenses. So when we talk about the costs of using freelancers versus permanent employees, if you look at a permanent employee's salary and you divide up a number of hours they work versus a freelancer, the freelance rate's going to be more expensive. Okay, so you look at it and you go, well, I'm paying my employee 100 Rand, but I'm paying my freelancer 250 or 300 Rand an hour. Why would I use freelancers? What you've got to consider is the fact that there's so many other additional expenses built into permanent employment. So these are some of them. And if you add all of these things up over the lifetime of a business, you find that all my research was over a 3-year period. You'll find that over a 3-year period, the freelancer, even though they're charging more per hour, is actually about 2/3 the cost of a permanent employee, as long as the company is obviously cutting back on all the other expenses, especially the rental. When we look at in the US, some of the commitments people are working on in terms of industries, we find that like the HR and general management, project management are working full weeks. They're working 39 hours a week on average, billable hours as freelancers. And you can see through that list, a lot of those people, you might be sitting in some of those sectors. But if you consider that a normal week is a 45-hour or 40-hour week, and these people are working 39 billable hours, there's enough work out there to give these people stability as a freelancer. And we'll talk to you about sales shortly. Technology is the biggest enabler of helping freelancers find work. These are all American stats. So 64% of Americans found work on the internet, and that number has increased by 42% in the last couple of years. 2/3 said they found work online dramatically from 2019 to 2018. 35% said they're using an online portfolio or their own website to find work. And this is the stat that I love the most, is that half said they spend less than 2 hours a week looking for work. As in we're doing sales and we're looking for work. So we're working between 35 and 39 hours a week, and we're spending less than 2 hours looking for work. Those metrics and those ratios show quite a healthy space in the freelance economy. Now, there are obviously places to work. We find that there's massive organizations like WeWork globally, and there's obviously a lot of controversy around WeWork at the moment, but put that aside, WeWork have about 500 buildings globally. They are the single biggest tenant on the island of Manhattan. They're the single biggest tenant in London, and they house people from the one-man business. I was in WeWork for 4 months last year, right through to the big globals like IBM. Standard Bank had 135 staff in Rosebank. Naspers has moved into WeWork in Rosebank. So there's very large organizations in there which are catering for small businesses, medium businesses, and large businesses to mingle, network, and sell services and cross supply. Once people get work, they still tend to work predominantly at home. If you look at the co-working space, less than half the people are working at co-working space, but that number is growing. I'll show you some stats on that shortly. Obviously, the local coffee shop with free internet is another place. And in this country, a lot of people are required to work at the client office as a freelancer. We talk about platform. Platform is the place where people find work online. These are the 3 biggest online platforms in America. They are American platforms. However, the freelancers are from all over the world. So the South African freelancers on there, Indian, European, and obviously a lot of American. So freelancer.com is the biggest with 31 million freelancers on there. Upwork has 17 million freelancers on there, and Fiverr, with the 2 R's at the end, which is correct, have about 7 million registered users. Now, if we take Upwork, which is in the middle here, as the case study, these are 2019 numbers. There were 12 million active freelancers on the platform, people that are actually bidding for work and putting up profiles. There were 5 million companies registered on there who were possibly putting out work. Last year, there were 3 million jobs placed just on Upwork. And Upwork did $1 billion in revenue. So that's one platform, $1 billion in revenue. And that's not the biggest, and that's only in the States. So PwC numbers here, 2015, these are the European freelancers' contribution towards the European GDP, 28 billion, which doubled from 2014 to 2015. It doubled again in 2016 to 80 billion, and PwC estimates 570 billion revenue from platforms. This is not the total freelance contribution. This is the amount of money flowing through online platforms that freelancers are exploiting. If we look at the biggest markets, there's about 100 million freelancers registered around the world. Half of them sit in the States. 15 million sit in India, but 40% of the world's freelance jobs are being done in India because obviously price is the driver there. 9 million in Europe and the 2 million in the UK. Now, if you're going to take away one thing from this entire presentation, this is the slide you need to focus on. A freelancer that leaves a current job, so an employee that leaves a job, within a 3-year period is earning 2.8 times the 3-year current market-related salary. So as an example, if you leave today, you're a designer and you're earning 10,000 Rand a month. Within 3 years, the average designer is earning 28,000 Rand off the 10,000 Rand base. And I say this is I've got a massive spreadsheet to prove some of these numbers, but the average is 2.8. So some people are making more than 2.8, and some people are obviously making less than 2.8. And this is not the day you leave. There's obviously a bit of a U curve. You know, when you start, you start with less sales, and over time, your sales pick up. But after 2 or 3 years of going freelance, the vast majority of freelancers that I've interviewed always said they don't know why they took so long to make the leap. It doesn't mean they're not working hard. Often they're working way harder, but they are all making substantially more money than they were or could make as an employee. You also have to bear in mind that not everybody can be a freelancer. Not everybody's built to be a small business owner. So it's not for everybody, but the vast majority of people that become successful freelancers earn substantially more money than they do or could have as an employee. Some local platforms for hiring work. So Nomad now is the biggest in SA. There's just over 60,000 registered freelancers on there. They are posting work all the time. There's lots and lots of corporates looking for work across multiple different skill sets, and they charge between 4 and 5% of the fee that goes through their platform. And there's also an option that the freelancer pays the 4 or 5%, or the corporate does. Sometimes the freelancer gets their full rate. Another platform for a different side of the economy, FlexiForce is a platform that allows corporates to manage their freelance base. So this is not a job posting place. This is a place to go, well, if you're a bank and you've got 400 freelancers across your entire database at any one point in time, how do we vet them? How do we pay them? How do we rate and rank them? How do we share them internally? So these platforms are making it easier for corporates and the procurement side of the corporates to, instead of onboarding hundreds of freelancers, to onboard one program. The program onboards all the freelancers. The program takes care of all the taxes. It makes it very easy for the HR departments. One of my favorites is nameless virtual personal assistants. These people have been with me for 5 years. They've changed my life completely. They do all my billing, all my invoicing, all my logistics, all my booking of clients. They chase my money, and they buy my dog food online for me as well. So they're built as a PA for the small business, and a lot of freelancers use the service. I think it starts at about 3.5 grand a month. So I want to talk about a story and a friend of mine, Haley. Haley was an art director at a very large advertising agency for, I think, 6 or 7 years. And then about 2 years ago, she decided she wanted to join the freelance economy. She made the leap, and within a couple of months was earning more than her salary at the time. She decided she wanted to upgrade to a fancy German car, and the bank wouldn't give her finance. They deemed her as unemployed because she didn't have any pay slips, and she hadn't registered a business. She was a sole proprietor. She actually went back to her advertising agency to get a job for 3 months to get 3 pay slips so she could get the finance for the car. And this is a true story. But the reality in this country is SARS and the banks are so far behind in keeping track of the movement of the freelance space. The laws and the regulations are not geared for the freelance space. And my advice is, don't wait for them to catch up. Do what you have to do and move forward. Some of the risks outside of the obvious risks in terms of there's no guarantee of income, is that a lot of people cannot deal with the wave of up and down of income. You know, they're used to getting the same amount every single month on the 31st of the month, and now they're going to have months which are amazing and months where there's no income. And most freelancers actually born on a 10-month model. So, you know, between the holidays and all the holidays in between and all the bits and pieces, you only have about 10 active months spread out over the year. And a lot of people, even though they can make more money doing this, cannot deal with that up and down and can't manage their money and end up getting a job again. So Simon Dingle's a smart guy, and a couple of years ago was quoted on Twitter saying, it won't be long before all information workers are freelancers. And I genuinely do believe that. In the past, it was the big guys eating the small guys. And if you look at what's happening today, a lot of the small guys are getting together and they're actually able to, you know, go head to head with some of these large corporates and act like a business together. So I've unpacked a lot of the gig economy, just a very high level in terms of what I'm seeing and some of the trends there. So the big question is, so if I want to do this, like, where do I start? The journey is actually quite long. You know, the day you start is not a done deal. You're going to wake up and you're going to be positive and you think you're going to own this. And then you realize that it's a lot harder. You have to change what you are, and you have a lot of self-doubt and reflection. You send out a lot of quotes and no one comes back to you, and you're waiting around and people panic. But suddenly what you'll find is that you get your first big client, your first opportunity. And the next thing you know, the real opportunity is landed and you've started the journey. Everyone takes a different time and a different path to get there. And it's like starting any business. There's no guarantees. There's a lot of risk. And you've got to have like the grit to deal with that. A lot of people start with one client, and often that's just enough. A lot of people leave employment and take that previous employee as their first client. What you've got to bear in mind here is that you're building little blocks when you start building your business. And you don't need to know what you're building necessarily, as long as you know that you're building something that will be meaningful going forward in the future. So the first question you've got to ask yourself is, are you looking for another job, or are you going to join the new economy, the freelance space? Either way, you have to design your narrative, because the CV is no longer relative or as important as it used to be to getting a job. So I wanted to spend 2 minutes here just reading you a blog post I wrote 7 years ago. This is just as I came out of my business. And I came out of my business in forced circumstances. It wasn't something that I'd planned for. So bear with me here. On the 22nd of May, 2012, I walked out my office, which I had occupied as the boss for 17 years, never to return. It was a moment that took about 5 long years of mental abuse, jaw-clenching sleep, exhaustion to reach. My business was all I knew. It was an integral part of who I was in my life and how people portrayed me. After a few months of insomnia, tears shed in sadness and in pain, it was finally over, and I packed my car with little trinkets I wanted to take with as a reminder of what was, and I drove off. I was petrified of unemployment and finding a job and starting again. I had lost millions of rands, a large part of my ego and friends. For the first few weeks, I could not sleep through the night, and even though my 5:30 a.m. alarm had been turned off, the 17-year cycle of waking up in the dark could not be broken. I'd wake up and look for something to do. Anything would do, as long as it took my mind off what was. I avoided all phone calls, as the liquidated company owed monies and old customers demanded services that were no longer deliverable. I found myself pulling out weeds in my driveway, drinking coffee alone at the local roaster, or sitting in friends' offices using their free Wi-Fi just so I can get out my house. I dabbled in a few small businesses and helped the people who needed help, no matter what it was they needed. I was fighting depression, guilt, and loneliness. All my friends were trying to cheer me up with the fact I was free to do what I wanted, something I wanted for many years. But freedom is not what you think it is. Freedom for me is being able to make a difference in my life at my own pace and having an impact on people around me that I cared about. I was not any freer than I was in my business that I hated being in. I committed to holidays I could not afford, or clothing I did not need, in order to fill the gaping void in my empty existence outside of my business. My true friends and family, in their wisdom, kept reminding me that it would work out. I was a bright young man, I could start again, and I'd find my feet and hit the ground running. In hindsight, they were right. It just took me a few months to realize this for myself. I'm now an independent professional. I picked a new career that makes sense to me, that fits in my life requirements of time, flexibility, answerability, and creativity. You may think I'm lucky now, but it's a decision that I made. I took the time to find what gave me pleasure and allowed me to wake up in the morning with a sense of purpose. I never understood how people could love their job or how they could work for other people and not be the owner or leader until now. Risk everything for your happiness. I did. And now for the first time in years, I'm a toddler looking into my future with new eyes, scared of nothing, ecstatic with all the newness and change in the world. Now, the point of this post is, the reason I'm bringing it up here, is the fact that a lot of people out there, maybe on this audience tonight, are in the process of being retrenched, or have just been retrenched, or have been salary cut and can't survive. And there's a huge amount of anxiety that I'm seeing in the space at the moment. And bear in mind that everyone goes through the same cycles at different paces. It's the 12 steps. It's, you know, anger, acknowledgement, all those stages. So, but what is important here is that you have the opportunity to reinvent yourself. And I think it is something you should not waste this crisis on. So the question you should be asking yourself is, who do you want to be in this new world? Who do you want to be as this new person in this new job that you're taking on? Okay. And there's only two approaches that you can do. Okay. So the one is the obvious, the acceptable, the status quo, or the known story. Or what you can do is you can be counterintuitive, do the socially frowned upon stuff, find a new story, and be disruptive. Charles Darwin found that survival is determined by the ability to adapt to circumstances. You've all been exposed to IQ, intelligent quotient. You've all known what EQ is, emotional quotient. But those two combined in this new world equals CQ. CQ is your change quotient. Okay. Your change quotient is your ability to adapt to the current environment. If you're going to join this freelance space, you have to be super adaptive to the requirements of what is going on in the world today, as well as what's going on around the world within your potential clients. I believe that this change quotient is actually more important than your IQ and EQ combined. I don't know how many have seen this movie. It's George Clooney. It's called Up in the Air. But there's a great scene, and if you want to go check it out on YouTube, you can find a clip where he's interviewing some people that he's actually going around and retrenching. And he's speaking to one of the guys there, and he says to Bob, how much did they pay you to give up on your dreams? And Bob replies, 27 grand a year. And George says, and when were you going to stop and come back and do what makes you happy? And Bob says, I don't know. And George says, opportunity, Bob, for you, do it for your children. Thing, because the retrenchment package is always terrible. It's always personal. But I want you to look at these things as a potential and do it again. Once in the face, you've removed your safety net. You don't have giving you pension, problem, medical, or any kind of, you have to provide for yourself and your own future retirement. Things like key man insurance, making sure your last will and testament's in place, understand the risks in the way you've been married, because you might be married in community property and now you're putting your wife at risk. What does your medical aids look like, and what does your asset insurance look like? Things that you may not have ever considered in detail before are things that you need to start learning about and exposing yourself to. So the course that I run currently is called Your CV is Dead. Okay, like long live the CV. Now, your CV now lives online. Okay, it's the story you're telling people online. So I want to start with a few current examples of people that I think are doing it right. Okay, I want you to spend 2 seconds just looking at this website. It's richardmulholland.co.za. You can see what he's talking about there. Entrepreneur, blog, contact me, testimonials, right? Speaker. Nikki Bush talks to the same sort of things. Mark Stopfitz, he's holding up a microphone, therefore he's the expert. Bronwyn Crawford, Vusi Tembakwaya. Now, if you go and look at what these few people have in common, what you'll find is they all have a logo for their personal brand. There's the VT, Vusi Tembakwaya. So they all have their own logo, even though they have a separate business behind this, okay? They all talk about the fact that they're a thought leader and a public speaker. It gives them credibility in terms of the sales process. They all have online video testimonials or written testimonials from clients, past and present, and huge opportunities to click on their social media links and follow them online. So their CV lives online and their CV lives on social media. It definitely lives on LinkedIn, okay? LinkedIn is the place where business is still happening in terms of you selling yourself proactively to large corporates. So you need to make sure that you do have a well-crafted LinkedIn page, and it's up to date, and it's actually authentic to who you are, right? So if I do ask you for a CV, does your LinkedIn profile match your CV? Because it definitely should. If you can tell some great storytelling, put some thought leadership pieces on there, that'd be really, really good. The summary at the top is what people land on. It's what all they're going to be, that's the biggest concern. And it must be thoughtful and be true to your values as well, and avoid things like buzzwords. The most important place that you exist online is Google, okay? You have to own page one. So social media helps you own that. Any other kind of online PR exposure helps that. Your website helps you that. But if I type your name into Google and you don't own the entire page one, there's a good chance that I'm looking at the wrong person and I'm not going to hire you for a job or as a freelancer to my business. Everything you do online needs to be authentic. You are and have to become a marketing business, and you have to become your most important client. I want to spend a little bit of time on this because this is some of the more practical. Yeah. So when you start any business, and for small business in particular, you've got to have a very clear go-to-market sales strategy. So I'm going to unpack just in a very high level some of these pieces here so you can think about it in detail. I'm more than happy to share detailed information on this with pleasure, no cost or obligation after it via email, because I can't get through all these pieces here. So a victory condition is something that defines what winning looks like in your business. It's the goal setting piece. It's not your business plan, but it's what does winning feel like? So it's about going, well, in 2 years or 3 years from now, and it's generally long term, what does winning look like? Winning looks like I'm earning a decent salary. I work 6 hours a day. I'm doing work locally and remotely and internationally. So what do you think the business needs to look like? And that's then broken down into a 3-year, which is normally long term, a 12-month, which is normally the midterm, and then the short term, which is the next 90 days. So what are the goals, long term, midterm, and short term? How do the midterm goals feed the long term goals, and how do the short term goals feed the 12-month goals? A lot of time needs to be spent on that because that dictates what you're saying out there. The next piece is your primary product. This is the product or service that you want to be world class at, that you want to be famous for. It's what you want to be referred for and known for. It is not the only thing that you're going to sell or land up selling. So understanding what your primary product is, and then linking your USP, your unique selling proposition, to it. So what, outside of being famous for something, what makes you unique versus everybody else? You then need to be able to wrap that all into some kind of elevator pitch. There's a great framework called the Gaddy pitch, which is used for producing an elevator pitch. It's a three-pronged approach. It's how, when, ... That is the problem you're solving. So how, when you're being retrenched and you don't know how to start a business. What I do is ... This is your solution. And the last piece is in fact ... In fact is your case study. So how you've just been retrenched and you don't know how to start a business. What I do is help facilitate courses to get you up to speed. In fact, I've done it for 2,500 people in the last 2 years. Those sort of things. So what is your elevator pitch that speaks to your primary product and USP? Once you know what that is, so once you know where you want to go, what you're selling, what makes you unique, and how you're going to pitch it, you start with the 5 sales calls list. Now, the calls list are your wish list, your warm leads, your cold leads, your referrals lists, and your no lists. When you start a business, you focus a lot on the wish list to go like, I want to work with a whole bunch of these particular clients. And you build a database of guys that you're proactively going to go and chase and close sales. This isn't a slow approach. If you need the money urgently, you've got to be proactive. The sales approach is the email, phone, desktop, cold call, warm email, the introductions, all the ways in which you can try and get meetings with those 5 call lists to obviously sell your primary product and get the meeting. Marketing is crucial. I think a lot of people underplay the importance of marketing, especially for a small business, and telling people your story. We'll get into marketing shortly. And then things like management of your CRM. So how do you manage your leads? How do you manage your clients? And then that feeds into the last piece, the client retention. How do you keep your clients happy and keep them for a long time spending money with you? I want to see if this will load because there we go.
To the haters, the doubters, my 7th grade vice principal. To everyone who's ever told anyone with a dream they can't. This video's for you. Keep your head down, follow the rules, do as you're told, play it safe, wait your turn, ask permission, learn to compromise. This is terrible advice. If I were to write an autobiography, a book about my life, one title that would work would be Do What You Can't. because that idea encapsulates everything I've ever done. Like when I wanted to move to New York City and my dad was like, you can't, you don't have any money. Or when I first said I wanted to make movies and it was, you can't, you didn't go to film school. I want to have a TV show, you can't, Casey, you're not pretty enough. And to go even further, like if I were to characterize what this new generation of content creators and filmmakers, what we all do on YouTube and everywhere else is we do what we can't. Et 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh my God. You can't be an action movie filmmaker, but you get your parkour friends to dress up like video game characters and jump off some buildings, and you can. Right, Devin? Yes. You can't have a talk show, but you have a webcam, and you can. You beautiful bastards. What?
This is my first YouTube video ever.
Next thing you know, you're interviewing the president.
I heard that you're going to be out of a job soon.
Well, maybe I'll start a YouTube show.
That's what I'm thinking.
You can't fly around New York City on a magic carpet, but get your electric skateboard, some PVC pipe, great outfit, give Jesse a call, and you can. What do you think?
This is so dope.
You don't need gear, you don't need trucks or a crane, you don't need some big expensive camera rig that never works. When you're a creator, you don't need someone in your ear telling you what you can and can't do. I'm racing the subway! What you can and can't say.
I accidentally did the shocker. Oh my God.
They call us gamers, influencers, internet famous.
What the fuck does that mean?
But we know something they don't. You can start a vlog or a makeup channel. Or travel around the world with a gigantic piano playing in beautiful places for interested people. When you're a creator, all you need is your phone, an internet connection, and a good idea. A story you want to share, something you need to say.
Confidence is within yourself.
And then the rest is history. If you do it right, you get to quit the day job, make friends from places you've never been, meetups, collaborations.
Just two boys and 2 video cameras.
A life moving so fast and so full, you won't even have time to process it. So to my fellow creators, I say, keep creating, keep doing the work.
Hey guys!
And never forget, you don't have to listen to anyone, because in this new world, no one knows anything.
Hi
The
haters!
haters, the doubters are all drinking champagne in the top deck of the Titanic, and we are the fucking iceberg. Do what you can't.
So the point of that video is two-part. Right? The first thing is all you need is an iPhone, Wi-Fi, and an idea, and take away the excuses to stop producing content. Anyone can produce content at any time. And the second thing is, in this brave new world, no one knows anything. And that's entirely true, more so today than ever before. So a lot of the old school thinking in terms of how employment works and how we use people has changed dramatically. And there is no new rules. Like everything is open to change. So there's a great rule, which is the 1-9-90%. 1% creates, 9% disseminate, and 90% consume content. Okay. You need to be the 1%. You need to be the guys that are producing content and marketing yourself online every single day to get yourself out there. Okay. You have to own your media. In the past, having advertising was very expensive. Print, radio, TV was unaffordable, inaccessible. You now have a phone and you have free to cheap tools on your computer, on your phone that can produce stuff, and you have all the channels at your disposal to push your name out there. So the other thing as well that once that successful freelancers have in common is they have a very strong network. Seth Godin talked about the idea virus, and he talked about the fact that each one of us is a virus. And what we're looking for is we're looking for people that are sneezers, people that will refer and pass us around, okay? Excuse the COVID scenario at the moment in terms of viruses, but the reality is that you want to be remarkable enough that people will talk about you all the time. Another quick video.
Ladies and gentlemen, at TED, we talk a lot about
leadership and how to make a movement. So let's watch a movement happen, start to finish, in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons from it. First, of course, you know, a leader needs the guts to stand out and be ridiculed. But what he's doing is so easy to follow. So here's his first follower with a crucial role. He's going to show everyone else how to follow. Now notice that the leader embraces him as an equal. So now it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Now there he is calling to his friends. Now if you notice that the first follower is actually an underestimated form of leadership in itself. It takes guts to stand out like that. The first follower is what transforms a lone nut into a leader. And here comes a second follower. Now it's not a lone nut, it's not two nuts, 3 is a crowd, and the crowd is news. So a movement must be public. It's important to show not just the leader, but the followers, because you find that new followers emulate the followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, and immediately after, 3 more people. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point. Now we've got a movement. So notice that as more people join in, it's less risky. So those that were sitting on the fence before now have no reason not to. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, but they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. So over the next minute, you'll see all of the those that prefer to stick with the crowd, because eventually they would be ridiculed for not joining in. And that's how you make a movement. But let's recap some lessons from this. So first, if you are the type, like the shirtless dancing guy, that is standing alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals. So it's clearly about the movement, not you. Okay, but we might have missed the real lesson here. The biggest lesson, if you noticed, did you catch it? Is that leadership is over-glorified. That yes, it was the shirtless guy was first, and he'll get all the credit, but it was really the first follower that transformed the lone nut into a leader. So as we're told that we should all be leaders, that would be really ineffective. If you really care about starting a movement, have the courage to follow and show others how to follow. And when you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first one to stand up and join in. And what a perfect place to do that, TED. Thanks.
So the important thing here is that when you start your business, you're the lone nut, and you have to actually start a community. So I'm a big believer in starting a movement, making it public, build your first follower as ambassadors, and don't be afraid to fail. Let's get back into the CV piece here. So your CV as it stands in the old day is no longer enough, okay? A lot of CVs, if you can read that, look like this today still. They're Word documents, very text heavy, not very sexy to look at. This is the old way of getting a job. This is the front door. This is the back door. And if you can see that carefully, that looks like a leg that's been put into an ice bucket. And this is a true story. This is a guy called Matt Black. He bought prosthetic arms and legs. He put them in a box and he sent them to people that he wanted interviews with a little note saying, I'd give an arm and a leg to work for you. And 100% of the desktop sent got him 100% interviews. Doesn't mean he got the job because he still needs the skills, but it definitely opened the door and stopped the clutter of the Word documents CV. Another great example is the following, is that a lady called Kirsty Sharman, this is a couple of years ago, she wanted to work for a company called Retroviral. She started a website called wewantkirsty.co.za. She started a full-on campaign online for people to vote to try and get the owners of Retroviral to give her an interview. She started selling t-shirts with the hashtag WeWantKirsty, and she put out videos and a whole bunch of content to get herself noticed, to get an interview, okay? Did she get the job? Yes, she got the job. So the fact was she got through all the noise. She didn't go the usual way. She tried something very different. Interesting enough, this is the end of last year. This is the guy who actually ended up employing her several years earlier. This is a tweet saying, it's that time of the year where his CV starts slamming my inbox. He has his recommendations. Personalized communications will stand you in better stead. Companies want to know why you're obsessed to work there. Not get a job, why you want to work there. CVs are boring as fuck. What are you doing to stand out? Be remarkable. And this is the same thing. I'm seeing this everywhere. People are not looking at your CV anymore. It's too much noise. I talked about building the movement. This is a little movement that I started. It's a business bikes and breakfast. I've managed to start a movement, make it public. It's a great way for me to talk about what I do online and network and build my network and keep adding value to the network. There's a great way of finding other work. Amit Tilly, he's a director at a business called FCB. He's a bit of a bigwig there. He's actually just resigned from this position. But at the time, this was a couple of weeks ago, this was his Instagram post. Okay, this is his Instagram feed. Somebody started an account called Amit Tilly Look at Me. They put up 13 separate posts, and they then tagged Amit Tilly. Each post just went, "Hi Amit, my name is Ava. I'm a Norwegian art director. I'm in Joburg at the moment. I'm volunteering for an NGO. I'm looking for challenges. I want to work for your business." And he did this. He created this Instagram account, which cost him nothing, cost him probably about half an hour of thinking in terms of putting it together, tagged Amit Tilly, and as you would know, a couple of days later, he got the job. So again, no CV. I mean, there may have been a CV required in part of the process somewhere, but the fact is he didn't email the guy, "Here's my CV, please give me a job or give me an interview." He did something remarkably smart, cheap, and breaks the clutter or everything else.
That's me, Mark Carouse, half English, half French, born and raised in Fondant, France. But who cares, right? Well, give me a minute of your time, and I'll try and convince you why you should. I graduated from the University of Kent in the UK with a degree in business and European management in Spanish. 3 days later, I joined Apple Press Group, a media and advertising agency where I worked across 5 continents, interviewing the movers and shakers of the world, and saw my country reports published in world-renowned newspapers.
I then decided to start up my own company, providing an online tailoring service for men. So Mr. Taylor was born. As challenging as it was, I learned a hell of a lot. I eventually joined INSEAD, a leading business school managing programs and advising global leaders.
But enough with the boring stuff. You're probably asking yourself, what are a few of my favorite things? Well, apart from sunsets and long walks on the beach, I also happen to enjoy
Working out. Mixed martial arts. Golfing. Coaching. Playing guitar. Acting. Photography and blogging. Traveling. And socializing.
So why should you pick me out of 7 billion people living on this planet? Well, as a strong communicator and negotiator who can build effective relationships, I specialize in finding creative and innovative solutions to the toughest problems. I also happen to speak English, French, and Spanish, and been involved in some very exciting stuff over the last few years. This might sound a little Miss World, but I truly believe that I can bring a real and positive impact to your organization from day one. I'd love to join a creative agency where I could put my skills and experience to good use and apply my entrepreneurial principles to foster social transformation. If you'd like to find out more, get in touch, down on my CV, or simply laugh at my poor writing style, check out my website. Thank you.
So the point again is that this is his CV, right? You can download his CV online, but there's a high probability if this guy was applying for a job and you got 50 other CVs that you would give the guy the time of day for the first interview. Another way which you should be doing is building ambassadors. One of the quick examples that I'll use is that there's a magazine called Coup Magazine. It's an architectural magazine. They were running a Valentine's Day promotion. They called me up on a Wednesday and said, on Friday, it's Valentine's Day. Can we drop off this nondescript box for you? I said, sure. I didn't know what it was about. And in the box were a whole bunch of gifts. The gifts were probably costing about 250 Rand in total. But it was the thought that counted. In the box was a little, were 2 dog collars with a male and female name embossed on the metal plate. They gave me a case of my favorite beer. They gave me a little skateboard. They gave me a little badge that said, do not feed me sesame seed, because they know I'm allergic to sesame seed. They gave me a copy of the magazine. And initially I was freaked out as to how do they know all the stuff about me? Like, there was a lot of stuff in there. SPF for my gingerness and a brush to brush my ego, like all fun stuff. They phoned my girlfriend at the time and asked her 10 questions about me and said, please don't tell him that we're delivering this. And they just took the time and effort to figure out who I am and sent the desktop to me, got my attention, and many years later, I'm still speaking about it. They turned me into an immediate ambassador. So Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V, you can love him or hate him or love to hate him. he recently, end of last year, said it's never been easier to start a business and it's never been easier to fail. And what he means by that is that the barriers to entry today are almost nothing. You literally need a phone and a laptop and internet, and you can start producing anything and selling anything to anybody. So it's easy to start. The reality is that it's super easy to fail because the barriers to entry are so low. So it's very competitive. So you've got to be damn sure that you are aggressive in your sales strategy, that you're out there marketing on a regular basis, that you're building a community and producing content on a regular basis. And don't think old school when it comes to CVs to get work or to get a job. Be more creative with some of the examples that I've shown you. So I'm not going to spend more than 2 seconds on this. This is a bunch of cheap to free tools you can use. Again, all the resources will be available to you. But if you look at things like accounting, communication, client relationship management, all of these packages have very cheap barriers to entry from like as low as 100 Rand, sometimes have free. But all of these things help you run your business more effectively. So things like email campaigns, how to do all your imagery, how to run all your projects and run your clients, from proposals to all the templates for your surveys, all your tasks, all these things are available online now, which weren't a couple of years ago. So there's really, really no excuse to not be a successful business and operate like a proper business, regardless of your size. So just to finish off before we get into Q&A, there's the GSD, which is get shit done. So getting shit done is setting your goals, pushing the boundaries, achieving success, and always over deliver. And then just every single day, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. GSD is the consistency in your success, okay? It means you have to do the work that you dread, submit the taxes that you hate, have the hard conversations with your stakeholders, the harder conversations with your clients, and the most difficult conversations with yourself. So the takeaways are prioritize your time and don't waste a minute. Like get off Facebook, stop consuming bullshit memes, make sure that you're actively producing content, actively engaging with your sales strategy and pushing and prioritizing what you're trying to achieve, okay? Organize your day, block out time and be strategic with yourself. Bear in mind that each little block, which is those little Lego blocks, is going to help you build something. So each block you put down every single day will yield results over time, okay? Have a vision, have your victory condition, define your purpose and stick to it, okay? Expect pain. This is not going to be an easy journey for you to join this freelance space. It's a tough place, but it can be incredibly rewarding. I don't believe in having a plan B, okay? I believe in believing in yourself. There was the famous, I can't remember who it was, one of the American military guys when they were evading the Japanese islands during World War II, and they were getting slaughtered on the beaches. And one of the juniors turned to the general and said, we'll just bring them back on the boats. He goes, no, we're going to bomb the boats. That we're not coming back. There is no plan B. Don't be afraid of failure. Like, you know, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there, no one hears it. If you fail, no one actually cares besides you. So don't be afraid to fail. And each time you do fail, they're often very small, will help you get up and be smarter with the next piece. Okay. And work your ass off, get shit done. So I just want to thank you for your time so far. I know I've gone slightly over, and I'm more than happy to engage with any sort of questions at this point. Who's got something, maybe we could just look at what any of the questions that came out of the chat potentially. Tracy, you've got some.
So Brent, I've been checking the chat box. There are no direct questions, but I'm going to ask Laurie if she can please unmute everyone so we can get questions now.
Perfect.
Yeah, but it's how to care and what to use. Speak to me, I'll get you right.
Yeah, I've unmuted everyone.
I know, but we need someone who's. I've become very
No. The way to learn is to go there and do it. You don't. I just want to see this. What is this?
Andrea. Hi, Andrea.
Brent. Oh.
Yes.
Brent, how do you start if you've never had a website? What do you tell somebody who's going to build your website that you want to now find clients of it? How do they build it for you? What do you tell them so that you can now start looking for overseas clients?
Okay, so the first thing what I would suggest people do is that they need to write out a document as though they were going to mail someone. So if you were going to produce a PDF document to go, like, this is who you are, this is what you do, this is what makes you special. If you've got a product and price offering, depends what kind of business you're in. But start writing that out. And once you've got that, it's about, like, that becomes the basis of the kind of content that your website will require. So it should be the things around, like, what would your landing page say? And that speaks to like that Getty pitch. It's like, what is the problem that you're solving? Who are you solving it for? What makes you unique? And give me the credibility that you can do this for me. And then go into the list of services and the contact pages. You don't need an incredibly complex website unless you have a very complex business. Quite a few people that I've seen now have started businesses don't have websites. They only have social pages, and sometimes it's only LinkedIn and only Instagram. And they're using that very effectively to drive traffic to those pages. So, the first thing is, do you actually need a website? I'm a big believer it gives a lot of credibility to owning page 1 of Google. I do think you need a place to house a lot of your content. So I do think for most businesses, it's important. But start simple, right? It's literally, homepage, about page, contact me, like, very simple. And have a very strong call to action. And all you really want that thing to do is people to reach out to book 20 minutes of your time. Like, that's all you're trying to do to get into a sales conversation. So just look at other websites that you like, that you've seen in the past. And I'm a big believer in C&D, which is copy and develop. So where possible, that's probably often one of the best things you can do.
Brent, would LinkedIn be a better route then for people to?
So Helena, it depends. It depends on what you're trying to, what kind of business you're in, right? So if you're in a business that's got great visuals, if you're in advertising or communication or photography or something, then LinkedIn's not the best platform for that, because you can actually show what you do so beautifully on Facebook and on LinkedIn and on Instagram and on YouTube, for argument's sake. If you're a business consultant or an engineer or something it's far more difficult to show tangibly, visibly what you do, then LinkedIn's a better place, because you can write long format thought leadership stuff versus pretty picture stuff. So I do think that, you don't have to be on every single platform all the time. I think it's very important to pick the channels you want to be on based on what kind of business you are and who you're targeting. If you're targeting people that you believe will be on Instagram, then great, because creative people will be on Instagram, agencies will be on Instagram. If you're going after bankers, they may be on Instagram, because personally they may be, but their profile where they're spending more time is probably LinkedIn. So it's better to find them on LinkedIn. So I think it's very dependent on the industry and the contact person. Excuse the crudeness of this, but the CEO of the biggest bank has an Instagram account, and he gets on it every night when he's sitting on the toilet. So, like, you'd be surprised, but people in their personal capacity, where they spend their time online, isn't necessarily where you think they're going to spend their time. So it's very, it's difficult to keep all the channels. You want to be on all the channels all the time. It's difficult, and it's a lot of work, and you've got to have different content for different channels. So pick one or two, try it, split, A/B test them and see what works. And if it works, do more of it. If it's not working, do less of it. But in terms of websites, go very basic. I'm a big believer that there are sites, there's like Squarespace and WordPress and all these other great websites platforms that will cost you a fraction. I mean, a Squarespace will cost you, I think, 1,200 Rand or 1,400 Rand, depending on the exchange rate at the moment, per year, gets you 5 email addresses, and you build it yourself. You may need to spend a bit of time on learning how to do it, but rather going to a development house that's going to charge you 5, 10, 15, 30,000 Rand to build a website, start with a 1,500 Rand website, spend a day figuring out how to do it. It's cheaper, and you learn a new skill.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good. Any other questions? Tracy, are we done? Is that it?
Yes, I don't see anything else in the chat box besides everyone thanking you. And Brent, on behalf of Ort South Africa or Jet, we are truly inspired by what you shared with us tonight. And we're all going to go out there and GSD. So thank you for spending this evening with us and for your valuable time and expertise. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much, Brent.
Pleasure. And everyone can feel free to reach out to get the details from Ort with pleasure.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And all
Thank
have
you, everybody.
a
Have a good evening.
You
All right,
too.
and all the best, everybody. Chat to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.